What is up, guys? Hey, thank you for checking out Wednesday night service. We are so honored that you are here with us tonight. I wanted to kind of encourage you, if you're missing out on in-person worship, we are actually having in-person worship on Sunday mornings. The only thing we're asking is that you go and register on the church website. So you go to whiteplains.church. Maybe you have a home church and you're not having in-person worship and you want to be a part of that. Just come join us. We'd love to see you. We have 2 services on Sunday mornings, 8:30 and 10 o'clock. We're not going to do Wednesday nights for a little while like I've talked about the past few weeks, but I want to encourage you to be involved with Sunday morning worship. It's an experience that you don't want to miss. Being a part of fellowship and seeing people who are like-minded and being encouraged with face-to-face interaction from 6 feet apart is always awesome. But I also hope you just enjoyed that hilariously awesome worship set by a Rubber Chicken. But like I just said, I would love to see your face on a Sunday morning. Love to see you come and join worship with us. Maybe you're getting a little teched out. You're sick of watching church online, and you're just ready to see somebody. Come check us out on a Sunday morning. Go to whiteplains.church. Find the service you want to register for. This week would be May 31st. You can click on the 8:30 or the 10 o'clock time slot, put in your information, and you'll be ready to roll. When you get here, you'll come in the carport entry, and we'll see you on a Sunday morning. So tonight we are going to continue into week 4 of what to do when we don't know what to do. And we're actually going to conclude this series next week. And we've been looking at the life of Joseph, and we've been applying what Joseph has been going through in his life to our own life and our own story. And so tonight I want to start with a question. What are some of your all-time favorite movies or stories? So one of my all-time favorite movies is Remember the Titans. Great football movie where, you have these football players who are coming together. The schools are being desegregated. Their coach is an African-American coach, first one ever. And there's a lot of chaos and confusion surrounding this team, but they come together behind a common goal to achieve greatness. And they learn that the color of your skin doesn't really make you the person who you are on the inside. And so they come together. They learn from one another. It's a football love story as men grow in relationship together. One of my other favorite movies is The Lion King, and it is a top 5, in my opinion. It's a top 5 Disney movie of all time. Now, don't at me on social media. Don't message me. I'll just block you, ignore you, all that good stuff. The Lion King is a top 5 Disney movie of all time. And what I love about The Lion King is the backstory. the backstory of Simba, where Simba came from, who he was, the fact that he goes back and redeems his community, and he doesn't look at the mistakes he made as a hindrance. And when we talk about movies, one thing that makes a movie great is that you actually have to like that main character, right? And so the producers of these movies, they create characters we can attach to by giving them by giving us a deeper look into both the good and the bad parts of their life. And so seeing both helps us feel for them. It makes us actually care about that person and care about what happens to them. It actually helps us like them even more. And so movies show us some of what happens in a character's life by creating that backstory, and which the backstory is that way of letting us know some things that have happened to the character before what's currently going on. For example, maybe the movie has centered around a dad and his daughter, but the backstory shows us that their relationship, so the dad's trying to save his daughter, but the backstory shows us that their relationship hadn't always been good, right? Maybe the movie actually centers around a superhero, and that superhero is defeating the huge evil enemy. He's or she is defeating this enemy, and we get to know that person through backstories. We discover that, maybe this character actually had great friends, but they became divided in their relationship. And at the end of the movie, these two friends have to come together to defeat this common enemy. And it lets us know, and it builds the tension of that relationship by showing us the backstory and the fact that they actually had a great falling apart. And so understanding the backstory actually helps us understand the story the more complex factors of the story. It makes it more interesting, and it actually makes it a little more compelling. And sometimes introducing those things, though, can seem a little random. For example, we take this dad that is trying to save his daughter, and he's in this great chase, and then all of a sudden we get this flashback to them in the kitchen, and they're having this great debate over whether your knife goes on the right or the left side of your plate, and you're kind of confused as to why this backstory is showing up right now. But the reason is to make you understand why the redempting side is so much more powerful. But when we look at that, we actually start to think in that moment, wait, what? What does this have to do with anything? And see, there are moments in our real life story that make us kind of ask the same questions. There are things that happen in your story that have made you go, what's happening right now? What is taking place right now? And then you start to think, well, why in the world am I going through this? What's the point of me going through this at this moment in my life? And so for the past few weeks, we've been talking about this question, what to do when you don't know what to do. And today we're talking about what to do when people make fun of you, when a friend dies. We're talking about your learning disability that makes everything more difficult. We're talking about your parents' divorce is killing you inside. Maybe your self-harm habit is starting to get out of control. Maybe someone you love is really sick. In other words, we're talking about difficulties. We're talking about pain. We're talking about struggle. We're talking about problems. The heavy stuff, the painful stuff, the stuff that is real life stuff. And before we can ask the question, what do I do? We often ask ourselves, why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening right now? Why am I going through this? And just like a movie that flashes back to a scene that doesn't seem to make any sense at the moment, difficulties can make us feel the same way. Difficulties often feel random, pointless, and unnecessary. And sometimes we see the point after the fact, when it's part of our backstory. For example, maybe you have a broken friendship, but looking back, you realize that the friendship led you to make some pretty bad decisions in your life, and you may not have liked that version of yourself very much. So even though it felt bad at the time, you're now actually glad that it happened. You're actually glad that that relationship ended. Because sometimes we see the point after the fact, when it's part of our backstory. And really, sometimes we even see the point in the moment while the difficulties are happening. For example, maybe you found yourself struggling in band, and it was completely on you. It wasn't anybody else's fault but your own. You weren't putting in that effort, and so you got called out by your section leader. And you had to you started doing extra rehearsals, and then you actually got better, but it wasn't fun. But it was best for you. And see, it's nice when that happens. But most of the time, things that don't feel good seem pointless. We've all experienced hurts and things that feel pointless in that moment, whether it's not making the team, whether it's not getting the part in the musical, whether it's going through drama with friends or family. We've all asked the question, why me? When we go through things and if you're like me, there's usually not many good answers in the moment to those questions you have. And what's worse is, in real life, unlike in the movies, in real life, our difficult circumstances usually don't get a pretty bow tied on them as we walk through them. The outcome may not turn out how we wanted them to. It could be really difficult for us to see any point behind our pain, to find hope despite the hurt, or to find the determination to keep going, to keep persevering, to keeping on. And so we can actually learn a lot, though, by looking back at people who have handled a lot of these similar situations in their life. And that brings us back to the life of Joseph. See, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. He was then taken into a foreign country, a foreign land where he'd never been before. Then he was falsely accused. And so think of it. He went from free man to slave to prisoner. I mean, if anyone had the right to ask, what's the point? Why is all this happening? It was Joseph. And that's where we're going to pick up. Joseph is in jail for a crime he didn't commit, and where he makes some new friends. So look at Genesis 40, starting in verse 1. It says, "Sometime later the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined." So Pharaoh is the king, right? He is the one in charge. He makes decisions. If he gets mad at you and he doesn't like you anymore, you're going to jail. If you walk by and you burp and you had too many onions that day and he doesn't like onions, you're going to jail. If you make him mad at all, you're going to jail. Even if you hadn't done anything illegal, you're going to go to jail if Pharaoh is upset for you. And that's what has happened to these two guys here. They're thrown in prison with Joseph. And so let's keep reading. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night. And each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So there's a lot happening here, right? Remember, Joseph is in prison for a crime he didn't actually commit, but he continues to honor God. And that goes back to week 1 when we talked about Joseph knew that the Lord was with him at all times. And so Joseph knew, regardless of his circumstances, that God remained the same. And that's what Joseph is portraying here. I'm in prison, but I'm still going to honor God. So the men tell Joseph their dreams. And with God's help, Joseph is able to tell them what they actually mean. And what's even crazier about all this is what actually happens to these men is something that Joseph actually told them. For example, based on the dream that the chief cupbearer had, Joseph said he would actually be restored to his favorable position. And it actually happened. For the chief baker, Joseph said he would not have the same luck. And he didn't. And so the rest of the story is absolutely crazy. And as we're going to look at it here in a little bit, I want you to understand Joseph continues to be faithful to God. And as it continues, Pharaoh has a dream, right? Pharaoh has a dream, and he tries to find anybody in the kingdom to interpret. None of his leaders can interpret the dreams. None of his people who he trusts can interpret the dreams. Nobody in the kingdom at all, no matter if he goes to the smallest of person to the head of his household. Nobody can interpret the dream, but guess who can? Guess who can? Joseph. And Pharaoh knows this, right? Pharaoh knows that Joseph can interpret the dream because he was told. And so he goes and he gets Joseph out, and Joseph actually interprets the dream. See, Joseph knew that those difficult circumstances were going to position and prepare him for something great, something that only he could do. Joseph knew that if he stayed faithful, he stayed on course, he stayed the plan with God, that he was going to be placed to where there was only an opportunity for something that he could do. And I want you to remember that today. Remember that just because something happens doesn't mean it was something God did to you or he wanted you to do. You need to remember God is really good at doing the impossible. And if it's not good, God's not done. And I know that may seem really difficult for you to grasp right now because maybe you're going through something really difficult and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But if we stay faithful and we stay trustworthy in God, if it's not good, God's not done. Continue to keep your hand to the plow and don't look back. Continue to move forward, trusting and obeying God, because if it's not good, God's not done. See, it may not seem to make things all better right now, and it may not even make sense yet, but God is in the business of taking our hurt, our difficulties, and pain, and He redeems them. When you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. Everything you go to is positioning you for a purpose. And it may not be the story that you have laid out for yourself, but it's the plan that God has for you. It's the book that God has written for you. And it seems extremely hard right now, and you really want to give up, and I understand. It's difficult for everybody right now, and we all just want to kind of give up a little bit and just kind of throw up our hands and throw in the towel and say, I'm done. But if it's not good, God's not done. And the problems that we go through is God actually positioning us for something better. Something better based on the plan and purpose, the story that He has for us. The hardest and worst things we experience aren't the end of us or our story. In fact, they could be a part of something much more. They could be a part of the beginning of the greatest story ever. And see, your difficulties, when you look back and you reflect back and you look at your backstory and you share your backstory, those difficulties are actually going to be realized as opportunities and based on the promise that God has for you. And you're going to look back at those problems and you're going to see where you stand at that moment, and you're going to say, God, I'm so thankful that you took me through that. I'm so thankful that we learned from that. I'm so thankful that I grew from that, and I'm so excited about what you have done and where we are going, and I trust you and I have faith in you completely. God is going to do something more with your difficulties, with your problems. But how do we have a bigger perspective? How do we see that big picture? How do we realize that God is actually going to do something in our lives? How do we keep focused on that perspective? Well, the first thing is, remember that no one else has your life story. Remember, we know that difficult circumstances aren't fun, but they're unique to you. And they're going to put you in a position to learn and grow and discover things that no one else can. And God is using your tough stuff in ways you can't imagine because they have shaped you in ways no one else has been shaped. And that may not make it any easier, but it may give you a perspective or a way to see things differently. The second thing is, remember that your story can interact with others. So although nobody else has your life story, Many people face similar circumstances. And you could be that voice to kind of help them through their own challenges and pain. You could be a help. You could provide assistance. And you wouldn't be able to do that if you hadn't gone through it, right? You wouldn't be able to show perspective if you didn't live out the situation, if you didn't live out that problem. And so remember this, when you go through family drama, you can help people who are going through family drama. When you go through a hard breakup, you can understand how someone else feels when they go through a hard breakup. When you deal with a sickness, illness, or injury, you can encourage people who are actually going through the same thing. When you have doubts, and those big doubts, those things that make you question your purpose, and you have questions in your faith, you can actually be a safe place for other people to talk about those same problems. See, Joseph went through pain that felt pointless. But God took his impossible, bad situation and used it to create unimaginable good down the road. Used it to place Joseph in a position. Used it to redeem Joseph's story. So much so that we're actually reading about it, right? So much so that it's actually still relevant to us these thousands of years later here in 2020 as we're going through what we've gone through as the world, as a nation, as individuals. It actually is very relevant to us. And so my question is, what if God is using your painful situation to position you for something amazing that you haven't even imagined yet? And what if the first step is simply asking for help? See, we can look back on Joseph's story and apply that to our life, and then we can realize the struggle we're going through, and as we come through it, we can actually help other people. And you know what? We have to realize, too, that the struggle I'm going through, somebody's probably gone through a similar situation. No, it's not exactly like yours, because yours is a unique situation, but somebody has probably gone through something similar, and they could probably help you through that. We've talked for the past 3 weeks about small group leaders and adults and older people in your life who have actually lived life and gone through difficult situations. And I just want to continue to encourage you to reach out to those people. Those are the people who care for you and want to see you prosper and want to see you come through the difficult situations you're coming through. And they really want the best for you. They want you to find the plan and purpose God has for you. So I want to encourage you one more time tonight. Reach out to your small group leaders. Reach out to me. Reach out to the other adults in your life who have a Christian perspective on situations and can look at it and say, hey, look, I know life sucks right now. I know life's difficult right now. And I know you can't see the purpose right now. And I honestly, I can't either, but I know that God has a plan and purpose for you. And I'm here for you to talk to and vent to, and I'm going to listen to you, and we're going to filter it all through the filter of God, and we're going to read Scripture, and we're going to pray through it, and we're going to help you get through this together, because at the end of the day, the problems you have now are positioning you for something you could never imagine later. And so reach out to those people. You feel alone because you're making yourself lonely. You feel alone because you're positioning yourself for loneliness, when really this whole system has been set up, the whole church has been set up for you to succeed in community. You feel alone because you want to be, not because you have to be. So reach out to those people, because you may not know what to do now, but somebody could help you figure it out. Let's pray. Well, God, we thank you for the fact that there are people in our lives that we can look at their lives and look at their backstory and realize that they came through difficult situations, and yet you have a plan and a purpose for their life. And God, we just pray that you soften our hearts and our egos to actually reach out to people, to reach out for help, to reach out for assistance, to let us know that we're not alone, that we can trust in you, and we can trust and confide in those people who have been through similar situations to help us find the purpose in our problems. And God, I pray that if there's somebody watching this video and they don't know what it looks like to follow after Jesus and to follow the example Jesus has for them and to walk in that path. God, I pray tonight is the night that they make that decision to discover what it looks like to follow that path. God, touch our hearts. God, we're so thankful for all the people who are working on the front line. We're so thankful for all those people who have sacrificed so much over the past couple months, God. And we pray that you be with our leaders as we continue to move forward, and you be with our doctors, and you be with all these people who are in control. And God, we know that you have a plan and a purpose for this problem. And as we come through, we're going to be better for it. We're going to be stronger for it. And God, we cannot imagine what you're going to do, but God, we have faith and trust in you. You've done it so many times. Why wouldn't you do it now? We love you. Amen. So guys, have a great week. Remember, if you want to come to Sunday morning service in person, 8:30, 10 o'clock, go to whiteplains.church, register, come to church. It's an awesome time. We have fun. We worship God. We hear Pastor Rodney speak, and then we go home. I mean, it's pretty simple. So whiteplains.church, register for Sunday morning. I love you guys. Have a great rest of your week.
Start with your heads down, heels together, toes apart. Lift your head. Start with your right knee. Faster. Around and plie. Again. Knee, shoulder, shoulder, knee, fast. Around and plie. Wipe like safe. And shrug. Step clap. Point to your head. Hitchhike. Double dream feet. Rubber legs, wag your finger, and left foot 8 times. Right foot. Now 4 to the left, 4 to the right, and 2. Double dream feet. Rubber legs,